researched this, and he researched the tax aspects, so I can never understand tax law. And I did the constitutional aspects. I read that book that you just mentioned. And we tried to unpick some of this, we tried to disentangle, what's owned by the Crown in light of the state, what's owned by the Crown as a very, very rich family of aristocrats, and what's owned by us and lent to them, and vice versa. And it's hugely, hugely complicated. But there is a lot of legislation on it. But what we discovered was exactly the point that Hamilton makes in that book, is that the Crown's exemptions, so-called exemptions from claims tax, were never enshrined in law. They were voluntarily given up by various attorneys general in the early part of the 20th century. And what the state does, what the Crown estate does, and the Queen herself is implicated in this, I think, is they negotiate really bloody hard with the Treasury about the civil list every 10 years it is now. And tax deals are done in the negotiations around the civil list. But again, all of this is irrelevant in numerical terms, quantitatively, because the security aspect of all of this is never part of the equation, and that's what's really expensive. So, I did try to unravel all that at one point when I was going through this nearly 20 years ago. The Queen voluntarily makes it.
So I checked this on the Crown Estate website, but they give a quite an ambiguous answer.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Is it possible that, because I was reading an article this morning where this guy was basically just saying the whole wedding's a massive PR thing for the royal family to boost the whole public opinion and raise the profiles of those two. Is it possible for them to actually just move the next sort of who's going to be king down to them and skip over Charles? Or would he have to abdicate in order to...
He would have to abdicate, or he would have to be required to abdicate. Parliament has the constitutional power to alter the line of succession. So, and that was established in the Act of Settlement in 1700, and it was part of the end of the kind of the Jacobite ruling in the 17th century. So, I mean, one of the reasons why we had a civil war in the 1640s was because of disagreements over politics, mainly religion, but over politics and religion between the Crown and Parliament, particularly the House of Commons. The result of that was Parliament won, as you know, the war, and even when the Crown was restored, the Crown was restored on Parliament's terms. Right? This was made clear first by the Bill of Rights in 1689, and then by the Act of Settlement in 1700. And it's clear from that legislation, which remains the most important constitutional legislation we have in the UK, that Parliament can, we continue to have a king or queen because, and only because, Parliament for the time being continues to tolerate it. If we wanted to move, you asked a question about the mechanics. If we wanted to move from a monarchy to a republic, all we need to do is pass an Act of Parliament. Legally, that's all that's required. All we need to do is pass an Act of Parliament. Parliament undoubtedly has the constitutional right to alter the line of succession or abolish the Crown. If it wanted to, it could.
Could the Queen then not, in turn, seeing that, just dissolve Parliament?
Sorry?
Could the Queen not then, just seeing that happen, dissolve Parliament?
Yes, she could. And then you have a constitutional crisis. And there's no constitutional answer to constitutional crises, as the Egyptians and the Tunisians have recently discovered. We have a constitutional crisis. If Parliament legislated so as to abolish the Crown, and then the Queen either dissolved Parliament or refused her royal assent to the legislation, thereby denying it legal force, then you have a constitutional crisis. We haven't had a constitutional crisis of that magnitude in this country since 1689. But it could happen. It's highly unlikely that it would happen under the reign of the present Queen, but who knows what her son and heir might do. So yes, if Parliament was of the view that Charles was unfit to be king, Parliament could pass a law changing the line of succession. There's no question about that at all. And if Charles took the view that he was unfit to be king, he could abdicate, as Edward VIII did in the 1930s. Okay?
Yeah, I can't really remember. Did the Australians actually revoke the idea that the Parliament could be dissolved by the Crown
No,
No,
they
it's
didn't.
still
No,
there.
and the Governor-General still has the power to
Because I remember lots of Australians being really pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And there was huge
But there was a referendum in
strong
1989 in Australia as to whether they
Yeah.
wanted to convert to a republic, and they voted overwhelmingly no.
Hmm.
So the Australians were given the chance in a referendum in 1999 either to keep the crown or to move to a republic, and they voted to keep the crown.
So were they given that referendum because of pressure by their government?
They were given that pressure, I think, they were given that referendum because there was quite a big Republican movement in Australia that saw. Australia is a funny place, and one of the tensions in Australian politics is between what you might call old-timers who see their link back to the white Commonwealth and to the motherland as being, the future of Australia on the one hand, and people who see Australia as being a regional power in the Southern Pacific, and who see Australia's principal alliance as being obviously with New Zealand, but also with Indonesia, and northwards to China. In 1999, the old-timers outnumbered the new-timers, if that's what you want to call them, in terms of forging a kind of, there's a lot of this is about cultural identity and what Australia thinks it is. And the Australian political elite still, I think even now, by and large, thinks of itself as an important player in the white Commonwealth, rather than as a regional player in the Southern Hemisphere and the Pacific. That will change in time, but those tensions are still there in Australian politics, as far as we can see. But also, part of the reason why the Republican movement lost the referendum was because the particular Republican alternative that was put on offer by John Howard, the then Prime Minister, was unattractive. And it was essentially I can't remember what the details were, but it wasn't a kind of directly elected presidency. It was a presidency that would be either indirectly elected or semi-appointed by the Prime Minister. It wasn't particularly attractive as an option. The Prime Minister didn't want there to be a yes vote. So he constructed the alternative to make the monarchy look more appealing than the alternative. Yeah.
I vaguely remember a scandal that there was some time ago about someone trying to in a very clumsy way, trying to traffic influence with the royals. Prince Andrew, then, his wife or something. Well, I don't know.
Ex-wife.
And then ex-wife, yeah, that's right. So it looks to me like if you have a corporate conglomerate or something and you want to lobby the British government, this is a much easier way. It's much easier to go through the royal family than to go lobby the parliament.
Well, it depends who you are. Yes, that's right. It appears to be the case, doesn't it, that some not entirely savoury characters and institutions have been able to access lobbying in the British government through various members of the royal family. In the most recent times, Prince Andrew. Yeah, for sure. That story's gone away because the BBC won't cover it in the week of the royal wedding, but it will come back. I think there might be a judicial review of the BBC over its coverage of the royal wedding, because we think one of the things I've been trying to say all day is that the monarchy is a political institution. The BBC's charter requires it to cover politics impartially, and we think that its coverage of the royal family in the royal wedding week has been anything other than impartial, and so we might be able to make some legal case there that we should